Hey, everybody. Are we live? Just checking. You give me a comment if you can hear the volume and you can see the image. Okay, welcome to the very first Spruce Moose Aviation live podcast. Just want to give you a quick rundown on why I've started these live streams. I started the channel to initially give some information to student pilots like myself. I'm studying my CPL at the moment and just wanted to pass on the information and the questions that I needed answered when I started flying in that channel. The reason that I wanted to start the live streams was to get guests on that would add a bit more information, a bit more industry experience to the channel as well. So there's only so far I can go with my knowledge. But live stream to get extra people on with years of industry experience. I think our first guest tonight definitely hits that keynote. So to introduce our first guest for the very first Spruce Moose Aviation Live podcast. She has 20 years experience in aviation careers. She's a global interview coach to Top Guns and airline pilots. And since the year 2000 has helped thousands of candidates gain their dream jobs in over 40 airlines in 20 countries. She knows the aviation interview process like she's designed them herself. And she even does. I give a massive Spruce Moose Aviation welcome to Kirsty Ferguson from Pinstripe Solutions. Hey, Kirsty, welcome to the channel.
Hi, Tom. Great to be here. I'm really excited to talk to you about what's going on in the industry because it's such an exciting time. And thanks for inviting me to do it. I'm going to really enjoy passing on what's going on at the moment.
Oh, definitely. And I've got to say a big thanks for coming on as the first guest because, it's a small channel. And yeah, I just appreciate the fact that you're supporting aviation in ways that even if it's a small channel, you're happy to jump on a live stream with me and give an hour of your time to spend with me and the small amount of subscribers I currently have, but hopefully we can grow that in the future and keep guests as well.
Well, that's how everything starts, isn't it? If we all invest in what people are doing in the industry, then it grows and then it benefits everybody else. So I'm really, really happy to be here. In fact, I was just talking to you before about the name Spruce Moose because I had no idea. I am not a Simpsons fan. So, well, I've watched them. I'm not a non-fan, but I had no idea what it meant. So I'm really glad that you solved that for me before we started talking.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's only in one episode, and it's Mr. Burns is going a bit crazy, and he's got a little model plane. It's based off the Spruce Goose plane that was designed, and he tries to get Smithers to jump in and actually holds him to gunpoint to get in this little model plane. So it's a funny episode. You have to look it up.
I will definitely have to look it up.
I guess where we start is can you give us you've got a long history in aviation careers, but can you give us a bit of a background on who you are, how you got into aviation and what Pinstripe Solutions does and what it's all about?
Well, basically, Pinstripe Solutions just helps any candidate. We're an independent source of information, and we help any candidate to perform at their best in any airline interview or the Defence Force or the emergency services. So that's what we've been doing for 20 years. So, right from the resume through to the video interviews and the panel interview side and tech questions, all that sort of thing. So that's what we do. And I got into it in a really weird way because I always had an HR and general management background. But I was working I had my own business already, and I had a pilot come up to me and say, "Look, I can't string a sentence together. I think you can help me." And he was 23 and he was about 6'3", and he had an interview with Cathay Pacific, and I remember his name. His name was Duncan, and he got the job. Took me probably about 6 weeks to get him ready when I figured out what the issues were, and he just started referring everybody. Next minute, I had an aviation niche, and that was back in 2000. So I think it was a bit of an interesting way to get into it. I was already in
you fell into it through just a connection and
making the most of an opportunity that presented itself. I already had the skill sets and I was already doing a lot of this work, but not in this particular niche. So there was an opportunity and you run with it. And I think if there's anything that the pandemic's taught us is to not ignore those opportunities when they pop up and use all those resources that we have.
Yeah, definitely. I think a good point, especially for our subscribers, is that you can go through your training, you can get your CPL, you can do multi-engine ratings, you can do all these required licenses and add-ons to become a commercial pilot. But there's that extra layer of, okay, now we're we've got an interview. What do we do? And there's other skills outside of that need to be developed to give you a chance in those scenarios. So
there absolutely are. Yeah. And if we look at what's happening right now, I think AFAP told me that they've got 300 returned expat pilots that are just sort of in limbo, wondering what they're going to do. So the competition is changing as well.
Yeah.
We've got narrow body pilots flying in general aviation. We've got pilots in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who are deciding not to return to the industry for whatever reason, or they've gone to other career paths and they're maybe going to stay there. So who you're competing with at an entry level is not what it used to be. But then all of that's going to change. So I don't want to frighten anyone, because all of that is already changing, because the landscape's changing, because we are opening up and ramping up. And that's going to continue to happen. Yeah. So, and I actually shouldn't use the word competing, because I never feel that you're competing. What you have to offer is unique, and there's always more than one job. So I like people to focus on their uniqueness. And that brings me to what you were talking about before, about what those unique skills are when everybody's sort of got the same qualification level. And I think you're talking about those sort of everyday skills, or those attitudes and attributes that we didn't used to talk about. We just used to talk about experience and qualifications, didn't we? That was it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think aviation's a bit unique in that instance, where everybody who's getting an interview has the qualifications as far as the flying experience and the training that are required for the job. So I think people have to look at it from a point where, why have we got all of these pilots lined up that have the same qualifications on paper, that the airlines are looking for something else? And if you focus on what they are, if it's leadership skills, if it's how you react in a group, and that actually brings me to one of my main questions is, how much do you know about the full process? So I think it'd be really valuable for our subscribers to find out, how does the process work when you're getting into an airline? So you've got your airline interview. What happens after that?
That's a really good question. I think we'll come back to those other skills because that's really important. But when you've applied to an airline, every airline is slightly different and yet similar. So when you've placed your application, it could be direct to the airline, it could be through a recruiter, it could be just online, basically through a referral. There are a variety of ways that you can apply. You have to have a fantastic resume. And look, one of the key things that I find with resumes is that people try to make them really fancy. We all love Canva. I use Canva. And people try to make them really...
I'm getting it.
Well, I love it personally. They make them really fancy with lots of layers of design, and it looks amazing. But we've got a lot of artificial intelligence and software that sifts applications. So they can't sift a crazy layered resume. So whilst we want some design elements and something that looks great and professional and proofread, you've got to sort of keep it kind of simple, and you've got to have the content in the right order. So let's say you've got your resume and your cover letter in. The first step is usually online psychometric testing. So if you haven't heard of online psychometric testing, that every airline uses it, and there are 20 different types of packages that they can use, or software they can use. One of the most common is SHL, and you can go and practice free practice tests for most of them. So that's the next step to doing that. Now, what's sort of come in now is what we were doing in 2018 is video interviews. So a video interview is not a live online interview. It is a recorded video interview where you've got a timer. Yeah. I don't know if you've done any of those, Tom.
I have actually. Yeah.
Have you?
I've done one.
Yeah. Well, they're a little bit confronting because the question pops up. You've got a timer. They give you a few seconds to read the question, and then you've just got to smash out your answer and hope that, it's good enough. But you can think. The thing to know there is that you can prepare for those, and you need to prepare for those, because each part of the airline recruitment process, if you don't give it your 100% best shot, then you're not going to get to the next stage. So we don't want to cruise through the video interview saying, I'll go from there. That's not the case.
So do they generally have a video interview, and then do you still have the dreaded panel interviews?
Yes.
where you've got 3 or 4 highly experienced captains and managers of airlines and things that are doing these interviews? How does
You
that
sure
normally
do.
work?
You sure do. Yeah, and you're going to have a panel interview with at least between 2 and 4 people, depending on the airline. And at the moment, that could be online or it could be in person. Now that we're mostly sort of vaccinated, so and that's not the only thing you can have, because if they've opened up recruitment as they used to do, then if you rock up on the day, you're probably going to have a group exercise so they can see
Okay.
how you
That was going to
manage
be
your
one of my
group.
questions too.
Yeah, well, there you go. And group exercises, I tell you what, people think they have to solve it, but you don't have to
Yeah.
solve it. They're actually just seeing how you interact within that group.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So they give you a problem that might even be unsolvable, and
yeah,
just watch and see how you deal with people, and maybe throw some frustration, some curveballs in there to see how you can handle it and work
exactly.
together as a team. And yeah,
Yeah. It's about how you participate. Look, one of the most common things to do is they've got an A-type personality who, tends to take over and take charge and lead it. They'll take them out and see what the rest of the people do when they've taken that person out, things like that. So they're
yeah,
not something that you should be apprehensive about, because there's only one key word here, and that's participation. If you don't participate, we can't assess you.
yeah,
And we want to see how you're going to work in that team. And there are different roles that we need. Just because you're not the most outgoing person in that group doesn't mean you're not going to be great at the role. But you still have to find a way to participate. But I suppose that's the
yeah.
stuff that I teach people to do. I don't have a problem with participating.
Neither do I. I'm trying
And
a
I forgot
live
about
stream
the
for the
sim.
first time.
Exactly. Yeah, we're just doing it. But I forgot about the sim as well. So they're gonna pop you in a sim, of course.
Yes, that was going to be my next question. So, just to do a bit of a recap. So, obviously, we do resumes at the start. We get an interview. We do a lot of them are doing the online interview. The next process
Hmm.
would be coming in for a panel interview.
Well,
Are
you
those
skipped
generally?
psychometric testing. You got to
Oh,
go. Yeah.
okay, so psychometric. Do you know how they
Psychometric, which is the
normally
second
run
step.
those
Yeah.
tests? Do you know how they
Sorry.
normally? Is that an online process, or do you
Yes, it
go
is.
in?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, let me be clear here. For cadets, you usually have to do aptitude testing in person. So aptitude testing
okay,
is different than psychometric testing. So if you're going into an airline cadetship, they want to get you in front of a screen with a joystick. They're going to throw simulations at you. They're going to throw questions up on that screen, and they want to see how you manage all of those things.
okay.
So aptitude testing is different than online psychometric testing, which is usually when you're a qualified pilot. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, so I think I've actually had a go at the aptitude testing. There's a few online that you can do that are apparently similar to the ones I use in the interviews. So I
Apparently,
don't have a
it's
link
yeah,
for it, but it was a while ago when I tried those. So
yeah. Look, apparently is the key word. Two of the most common ones are Wombat and Compass,
okay, I
and
think
none
it
of the
was
online
Wombat
ones are
from
like
memory.
those. Yeah, well, none
Yeah.
of them are exactly the same. And those are
Okay.
just two of the most common ones. Yeah, there are obviously certain academies use different ones as well. There's one that starts with a P that I can never pronounce. I don't know why. I just can't. I just Pilap. Pilap. I just can't pronounce it. Yeah.
That's all right. Google can help us out on that one. I guess that leads me into what you know, or if what you've heard about rustlings in the aviation industry at the moment, about who's making moves and when we're looking to hire pilots, and whether it's domestically based or overseas in the US. Do you have connections with airline companies in the US that are looking for pilots, and how do students make that transition to the US?
Yep, all of
Yeah,
that.
what do you know?
All of that.
All of that.
Yeah, I'm in a really lucky position where I'm trusted with quite a lot of vital information. And my only role, as I see it, is to support the industry and to support my candidates to succeed. So the information that I put out there, I have to make sure it's 100% correct.
Yeah.
And yes, we are starting to ramp up. We've got airlines such as EFA and Alliance and the Qantas Academy. They're all processing candidates. Cobham Aviation are, etc. Now they're actually processing pilot candidates at the moment. So to have all of them doing it now is a fantastic sign that we're going to have even more next year.
Okay.
We've even heard murmurings about our major carrier may do something next year. I can't confirm that, but those murmurings are there, which again is
Okay.
just a great sign, isn't it?
It is.
And
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the elephant in the room, or the Aussie in the room, which is Bonza. And now most people have heard of the new startup low cost carrier Bonza. Now,
Yep.
really, really interesting airline, because they are targeting the leisure market, so they're not trying to compete with any of the existing operators, which I like, because I
Okay.
think there's
Yeah.
room for them. We've had Virgin New Zealand, Jetstar New Zealand, and Tiger all go away over the last couple of years. So I think there's room for another carrier, especially one that's not trying to compete, but trying to add to the market and add something new to the market.
Yep.
So I really like the sound of them, and I think they've got some really good things to add to the industry, and they're also they're looking at kicking off, next year. So that's going to open up not just
Yep.
pilot jobs, but hundreds of jobs.
Yep.
I was
And
privy to.
hopefully along with the whole aviation industry, how we've been through COVID and how they've dealt with COVID. And yes, we've lost some airlines, but we've had a lot of the majors hang on. Hopefully the next 10 years is a trajectory that, is all positive for both pilots, airlines, international travel. So I think as far as bonds are starting now, it's a really good sign. Unless they do something majorly wrong, I think it's anything but positive.
It is. And of course, they've got to meet all the regulatory requirements, which they're in the middle of doing at the moment, obviously, I would say in startup mode. But they've got great backing, and the business model works. It's worked in other countries. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I think it's really important to note as well that because some pilots haven't flown for 20 months or more, that we do have opportunities in the US. And we in particular have referral pilots through my organisation to both GoJet and PSA Airlines, who are actually processing the E3 visa, which is specifically for Australian pilots. So they're actually doing it. A lot of the airlines over there, so the regionals, are sort of saying, yeah, we're going to, or we're accepting expressions of interest, but they're not actually pushing candidates through. But those two are. So we're working with pilots who already have the jobs to go, hey, will you help our candidates get through, at their discretion? Obviously, they've got to check those candidates as well, but that's certainly happening. So it's only 2 years, Tom. It's 2 years, and they can come back. We're not losing them.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. You mean 2 years as far as COVID?
No, 2 years for the visa. So if they decide,
so you get Yep.
Yeah. So if they decide to go to the US, which is ramping
Yep.
up faster than we are, it's only a 2-year commitment. So we're not, by that stage, our industry is going to be going nuts. And there was something else you said about, it may be, opening up in a big way. And I spoke to the AFAP about this, and they are planning for a surge. They're absolutely planning for a big surge in 2022, 2023. And they've really got their fingers on the pulse. So they're one of the sources that have said that we need to plan for the surge, and we need to get the cadetships running again. We need to get more people into the industry, because there are going to be lots and lots of jobs to be had.
That's great. It's good news for all of us that are currently training. And if anyone's watching that has stopped their training, maybe it's time to start revisiting jumping back in and getting some flights done and getting those tests done, because I think, from what Kirsty's saying, the next couple of years is going to be really interesting and really positive for everyone getting into aviation or anyone that wants to become a pilot. So even if you haven't started yet, obviously you've got a few years of CPL and training to do, but I think given what Kirsty's saying, we've still got all of that time up your sleeve. So if you're thinking about it and you're sitting on the fence, jump in, and there's probably going to be a job there for you if you tick all the right boxes. So.
Yeah, we need you. Restart your training. Restart your training. And we'll look. I think, if you're not in a cadetship and you're paying for your CPL, you're paying for your licensing, or your self-funding, or however you're doing it. One of the tripping points is that there's no pathway from there into the airlines, and that's something that I know there are new industry bodies coming up to try and solve that, because they do that in Europe.
Okay.
If you've got a CPL here, you have to go and build your hours as an instructor. There's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, we're going to need more and more instructors. Or you have to go into GA, or irrespective of cadetships, you can go into the Defence Force and spend 10 years building your hours. But once you've got your CPL, you can't go into an airline. So bridging that gap and providing some sort of pathway, as they do in Europe, for CPL holders, I think is a really big conversation that many of us in the industry are starting to have. And why not now? Everything's changing. Why can't we change that? So let's put it out there, hey?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because that's something that, so I started flying when I was 33, decided to become a pilot. I'm 36
So
now.
last year, yeah.
Yeah, I'll do, last year. So I decided early on, and when I was doing my research, that I'd have to go into GA, and I was actually looking really forward to going through GA. And to be honest, didn't know if I was going to keep going. I was leaving myself open to the jobs that were in GA and to see whether I liked it or not along the way. And just ticking one box at a time. So later on in my career, once I've built hours and I've got a lot of experience, then we might look at what it's looking like at the time and move into airlines. So hopefully we can bridge that gap with the experience and the hours. So
well, there's nothing wrong with going into GA. You know, we've got narrow body pilots flying in GA at the moment because they needed the job, which is super understandable. But you get to do some amazing flying in general aviation that you're not going to get if you go straight into a multi-crew operation. So, whether it's prawn spotting or fire spotting or some of the more bizarre things that you get to do in general aviation or scenic flights or what have you, you're not going to get more hands-on experience than going into general aviation. And there's another organisation that actually supports pilots to do that. So they actually a little bit more au fait with what the requirements are in GA rather than taking them straight out of a CPL and throwing them into that area. But, connecting with those organisations and building those relationships early on, like, on LinkedIn or however you want to do it, but building those relationships is super important, because you imagine we might have a lot of jobs, but if everyone goes back into training, then we're going to have a lot of candidates. So you have to have some of those relationships going from the start of your career. So mentors and people who are going to champion you, get in amongst it, make those connections early on. Super important.
Yeah. Definitely. That's some great value. That's why we got you on, Kirsty. All the things that I don't know, and I'm a pilot, and these tips are more than valuable. So that's great. I did want to touch on women in aviation as well. It's at the moment it seems like the figures are still fairly low. It seems like we're living a bit in the past as far as getting females into aviation. What are your thoughts on that area?
Well, there are some great organisations that are championing, I always find that word hard as well, women in aviation, which are called Women in Aviation. There's one Women in Aviation and Aerospace. So they're bringing that into the schools, but we certainly need to bring it in earlier. And we don't have, too many role models. I think it's only, is it 5? Don't quote me, but is it 5% in Australia? And I think the largest percentage is India, which is around 12% of female pilots.
Okay.
Which I always find massively interesting and inspiring, that they're investing in female pilots. Yeah.
So they're doing something different to our current industry.
Yeah. So what aren't we doing to inspire them? And I think it's maybe getting in there early enough so they're taking the right subjects. Rather than getting them in year 12 and saying, hey, have you thought about aviation as career? When some women contact me, they go, it's been suggested by my careers counsellor, but I really don't know anything about it. And as you know, people who really want to fly, it's kind of in the blood. It's kind of there. I've become that way. You become fascinated with it. So I think getting them earlier is the most important thing. And we do have some great role models for women aviators in Australia, but we could always have more. There is a bit of a discussion around benchmarks. If cadetships say we want to have 50% of women and 50% male, that male candidates can feel disadvantaged. But let me just say really clearly that the standards don't drop just because they put a benchmark in place. It's a mental aspirational goal for them to champion that. But they can't take on female aviators if they don't meet the standards. So there's always going to be an aptitude and standards-based sifting, and we're nowhere near 50%, even if that is the aspirational goal. So
Yep.
I really don't see a concern there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it, not just in aviation, but in any organisation where you've got a better split of male to female, we all bring different attributes and traits to an industry, and aviation, building on the very small amount of female pilots that we have at the moment, can do nothing but be a positive for aviation as a whole. Because if you've got a view on managing an aircraft or managing a team that's remotely from a male perspective, then why can't we get other perspectives from more and more females in the industry? It just, it's a no-brainer to me that we bring as many or inspire as many female pilots to get into flying that we can. I actually been at 2 flight schools, and at both I've actually flown with female instructors, and if I'm being honest, I liked flying with them a lot better. The temperament
Really?
in the cockpit. I did, yeah. The
Yeah.
temperament in the cockpit, and I just found the relationship dynamics from the training point of view were actually, I learnt a lot more from the 2 main female instructors that I flew with. So
That's really interesting to know. What couple of things do you think they did better? Can you give me something specific? Because I'm really interested in that. I hadn't had that feedback before.
yeah, I think it might just be a personality thing that I between the 2 instructors that I flew with, but I seem to think they held me to a really high standard, which most instructors do, but they knew when to push me, and they knew when to say if I was task saturated or feeling overwhelmed. It was a lot more subtle in their training methods, I guess, if that
Okay.
makes sense. It's hard to explain, actually. I just overall had a better time flying with the 2 female instructors, and I've flown with a lot. I didn't mind who I flew with, so I'd take any flight with anyone that I could, and I just found that overall I had a better experience. So
No,
yeah,
isn't
it's a
that
bit of
interesting?
feedback. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's really
not to
interesting.
say that I didn't like flying with all the male, if anyone's watching, all the male instructors I flew with, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's just a bit of feedback for you. So
Yeah, well, one doesn't counter the other. And one thing I found, I put together a pilot transition program when obviously so many hundreds and hundreds of pilots lost their jobs. And the first person I spoke to was a female pilot who had just finished the Virgin cadetship on the ATR. And I spoke to her, I said, will you do it? Will you do a talk with me about what you've done? Because before she saw the writing on the wall, and before everything went to hell in a handbasket, she had already gone out and knocked on flying school doors and said, oh, I'll come and work for you. What roles are they? And she went into a business development role and then got her instructor's rating while she was there. So she has never stopped flying during the pandemic because of that. And it's
that's
it's
great.
that, and I found that really inspiring. And super young, early 20s, but she just said, what can I do? And then she started knocking on the doors. I think that sort of attitude, whether it's a male or a female, that sort of attitude is something that every employer wants. It's tremendous.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you do have to put yourself out there, especially during the last couple of years when there's been so many question marks over when things are starting up and what the future looked like. It's getting a little bit clearer now, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of question marks out there. So if she was putting herself out there and managed to fly during the whole pandemic, then it just goes to show that no matter who you are, if you put yourself out there and keep pushing, that it's still possible.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I always think about it this way, is that I think a lot of aviators, they just have one career path in mind and you just want to go this way, whereas life doesn't work out that way. Sometimes you always, not sometimes, you always have to have a plan B, C, and D. And maybe
yeah,
you're still heading for the same place, but you've got to go around it. You've got to go over the
yeah,
top. You've got to go
so
via 2 different jobs. It doesn't
yeah.
work out that you can just go straight at it. Some
So you
people it does.
to be willing to pivot at any point, don't you?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that during the pandemic is that we worked on people having a side hustle, having a secondary career path or doing an additional qualification, because in my 20
Yeah,
years, we've had 4 downturns, and I don't want to put people off because we've come out of them bigger and brighter and shinier every single time, and that is what's going to happen this time. But with every other industry, having a side hustle is quite normal. So we have to take that on board. And I would tell anybody going into any industry to have something else that you can fall back on as well, or have something else that that's going to be a secondary income stream. It cannot hurt to have that, because you might not get that
Definitely.
GA job straight away,
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a bit like my story at the moment. I had my own business for 7 years before I decided to become a pilot. But while I was becoming a pilot, I got my truck license and I upgraded slowly. It's actually a fairly small investment, and there's a lot of work. So there's a lot of work out there being a truck driver at the moment. And I upgraded my licenses a couple of times and now drive really big trucks in a mine. So pays really well. It's casual, and it just fit in with flying and fit in with the big goal that was on the side here. And you've got to learn to pivot and be willing to do those, I guess, little side hustles that can also help you and lift you up to keep pursuing your career in aviation. So,
well, obviously, that's what so many people have had to do in the last 2 years. And I truck driving and train driving apparently has been a big one as well.
yep.
And going into the hospitals, obviously we've needed a lot of staff in the hospitals. And one of my neighbours is an emergency doctor, and he said to me, "Why didn't you tell me how great pilots and cabin crew are in emergencies?" I went, "Well, they do that training, He said, "They are on fire. I'll have them in my emergency department any day." And I was absolutely thrilled to hear that. And it also happened to me, because I love this industry and I love working with all the people in this industry. I always have. I sort of got myself a little bit too niched, and when the pandemic hit, it was like, holy cow!
What? Yeah.
All my eggs are in this basket. So I pivoted to a brand called Interview Chicks with an X. I just put that out there. I'd always coached for other industries, but I just had it sitting away over there, not really doing a lot with it. And then I thought I better do something with it. And what's got me through has been that pivot. But at the same time, I've been able to do things for aviation that I wouldn't have been able to do if I had to go and work for somebody else. And that's been really exciting. And one of those things was under Interview Checks, I got a contract with Seek. Now, how many pilot jobs are on Seek? I'm like, I'm your person. I am your person. So I was lucky enough to get that contract, because it was actually, they loved the fact that I worked in aviation, I worked in defense, I worked in emergency services, and we could coach anybody from 16-year-olds to 60-year-olds. So that got me through without having to give up what I was doing in aviation. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's a great lesson. And I think it just goes to show that you initially made a choice just to put yourself out there and pivot in a certain direction. And then the opportunity, by the sounds of it, with Seek has turned up because of that, you putting yourself out there in this first pivot, which got you attention and linked back through to your aviation experience. And there you go. So yeah,
exactly.
Just goes to show, put yourself out there, take a risk, start live stream.
Yeah, well, you do, especially in this industry. If you're trying to get those entry level jobs or get back into the industry now after 20 odd months out, when you're not current, all of that, there are some things you're going to have to think about to do differently. So I was just going to cover off a couple of those if you like.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. Yeah, go for it.
So one of the things I love people to do is to just start talking to people in the industry. So if there's an airline or an organization, it might be Air Services, not Qantas, whatever the organization is, connect with that organization on LinkedIn and then stalk the key people that you admire or want to follow, or the key people in that business. Start commenting on their posts or on their blogs. The more that you do that, your name pops up. You're forming a relationship, whether you know it or not. That sort of stuff happens to me all the time. It's like they've seen my name and eventually they think, oh, I might be able to do something with this person, and opportunities come up. So that's something I want everybody to be doing, whether they're coming back into the industry after that time away or whether they're a new person in the industry. Start your connections and your networking now, stalk people. But when you do it, don't just send a banal invitation. I want you to ask a question. If you've read one of their blogs, then ask a question. Don't ask a big screed and hide it down here in paragraph number 3. Say, look, I really liked what you wrote there, Kirsty. I really relate to that. And I just wanted to connect with you because that matters to me, whatever it is that I wrote.
Yeah.
And you think I'm going to say yes? Yeah.
I think, look, just, and a lot of those platforms, if you're commenting and interacting, they'll give you a little tag sometimes to say like a top fan and things like this. And
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
no, that's a great tip.
Yeah, and that's one of the key things that you can do at any level is to start to create those avenues. One of the things I notice people are still doing again is leaving references off their resumes. So
Okay.
I know that organisations will ring your referees before they get you in for an interview. So if you haven't got your references on there in our sort of incestuous industry, then they're going, what are they hiding? Or they're not
Yeah.
organised. So get your referees ready. Now, also, if you haven't been in the industry, you might be thinking, who do I use? Well, you can use people you've worked with or people who have been inspirational in your life, anybody that can vouch for you. If you're in a non-aviation job, then that referee still counts, because they're going to talk about all those things that you've done for them in that 20 months. And that they might be things that bring a whole new perspective to your understanding of business and industry and how aviation fits into that. So, and that leads me on to those other skills. All right. So this is going to be super important going forward.
Okay.
Now, for Seek, we called them everyday skills, and I kind of like that, so I'm going to keep it. But before that, I called them human skills. So if you're thinking about any pilot job, they hire leaders, potential leaders. You might be going into an SO role or an FO role, but they're looking at you and saying, are they a leader, and do I want to sit beside this person in an aircraft? So you've got to demonstrate those skills, and whether you've been in aviation or not yet, you can still demonstrate those skills if you've put the time and energy into defining how you do whatever you do. And just to clarify that, how you work is your behavior. And most people know that's what I specialize in is behavioral coaching. So how you work means how you communicate, how you work within a team, or how adaptable you are, or how resilient you are, or how you go about problem solving. Now, in the last period of time, tenacity and resilience are two things you've got to have had to have survived it. Now, those are employable attitudes and attributes. So in any interview from here on, you have to be able to talk about those things. You have to know how you work and who you are in that working environment. And when I was speaking to the wonderful people at Bonds of the Startup, they were agreeing with that, and that their culture is going to be very much based on the type of people and how they work, and they want that to be one of the key hiring factors. So
definitely, and that's something that can start straight away, isn't it? Whether you're looking at becoming a pilot, but you're a young person, you get your first job at McDonald's. You can develop those leadership skills and the importance of becoming a valuable employee for whatever organization you work for. And it can only benefit you with those references in the future and things like that on your resume, and some good words. Make a phone call to your reference and your manager about who you are and how you work as in a team. And so that can be something that can be developed at any
Absolutely.
point.
And there's an exercise that I've used for 20 years, and it's in my little book that I know you have read. Well, I think you've read it.
Which one?
One? It could be that one. Yeah, it could be that one.
All right, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this one in a second.
So in there is an exercise that I've been using to help people understand how they're perceived, and that means how you are in the world, and that way the things that you need to work on a little bit more, that need a bit more effort, and those things that you're brilliant at already, and you find the language about that, because that's sometimes the hardest thing. But if you don't know those things, you're going into interviews, then you're going to be on the back foot, because you're going to be asked about that in your video interview. You're going to be asked about those things in your panel interview. And you can always ask someone like me, because that's obviously my specialty.
And you can start by grabbing a copy of the Albino Chameleon
So
this is your book.
You turned into an American. Have you turned into albino?
Albino.
Albino.
I say albino. What's
Do
wrong with
you?
that?
I don't know. I'm a Kiwi. We've got more of the.
Well, you wrote the book, so we'll go with yours.
Oh, either or. You say tomato, I say tomato.
So, can you tell us a bit about why you've written a book and what's inside this book?
It's really about how to talk about yourself without feeling like a complete weirdo.
Like a moron,
none
apparently.
of us. Yeah.
I think that's a line from the book. How to talk about yourself without sounding like a moron. Is that right?
Yeah. No, well, moron's a bit harsh. I think I say muppet.
What's it? Muppet?
I do use the word weirdo as well because nobody likes talking about themselves. Yeah, so there's lots of analogies in there about some of the weird and wonderful things that have happened when I've been speaking to people or coaching people. There's lots of stuff I've learned over all my failures in life because that's the biggest learning curve. I like to say I failed a lot, so I've learned a lot.
You had a lot of lessons. There's no failures in life. They're just lessons, right?
That's true. Well, you do fail, but you rebound and you learn more.
So that's the goal, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and I think none of us want to feel like a weirdo. So if we do this sort of thinking at any stage of our career, then we can have more of a handle on who we are in the world and how we go about things. And I think if you've done that, then pivoting and rebounding from things, it's really empowering. And that's why I wrote it, because I thought I've got a little bit more to say than I've been saying for 20 years. And as most people who've worked with me know, I can pretty much talk underwater. So I think there's another book coming.
It's great for a live stream.
I'm just letting you get the I'm letting you get the occasional word in, Tom. That's all.
I like this. See, I just have to host and turn up, and hopefully all of my guests are like this, and
they
we
won't
can
be.
Just soak up the information. But yeah, so if anyone's interested in the albino chameleon,
yes, or albino chameleon,
either way, I'll leave a link in the description below. And we'll also leave links to Pinstripe Solutions. And is that the best way to get in contact with you, Kirsty?
It is. All the connections are there. I'm all over LinkedIn. So there's a million ways to get hold of me. And I'm always up for a conversation. And especially at the moment, if you are struggling financially, I know what that's like. And I will always have a conversation with you as soon as I can. Sometimes there's a bit of a delay, but I absolutely will. So, get in touch.
That's great. That's good to hear. I'll be honest. I'm having a bit of issue. The live comments haven't been working on the platform, so I'm not sure why, but we're going to get some questions. I've been trying to fix it while we've been having a chat at the same time, but it doesn't seem like I can get it to work. So hopefully this did go live because there's no way to tell, but it'll be recorded either way. So I think we'll call it there unless you wanted to add anything before we go. And
I made a few notes. I was just seeing if there's anything. Oh, look, there was actually one thing, Tom, and that is don't burn your bridges. Whatever job you have right now, and the experience is going to be really worthwhile. It's an incestuous industry, so be careful about how you enter and exit an organization with that big picture in mind. I think that's extremely important. Either people will be an advocate for you, or they won't be. Either people are your people within an organization, or they're not. But I prefer not to judge. Just make sure that we do the right thing by ourselves and keep our standards at a really high level when entering or exiting an organization.
Definitely, that's another great tip. So, can I just say thank you? Thanks a lot for coming on the very first ever live stream on Spruce Moose Aviation. So hopefully it's number one show of many. But be hard to beat some of the value and the little tips and tricks that you've given us in this one. So first episode, but I'm going to call it one of the best already. So thanks again.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I feel very privileged to have been invited for the first one, and you're a natural. It's going to go mad.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. All right. Yeah, like we said, get in touch with Kirsty. I'll leave all the links, so links for the book and the links to the Pinstripe Solutions website down in the description. So this video will stay on the channel, not live, but on the channel as a video, so you can always go back to it. And we look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Thanks again, Kirsty.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
Bye.